Hey everybody, part two. If you haven't seen part one, for the people that do care about their heirs, there's another video for you to watch. This is the one for the people that don't care how much they leave for their heirs. Okay, so here's the scenario. You've got a mountain of IRA money, and you don't really care about how much you leave to your heirs. And I get a lot of questions about, well, should I be converting to Roth? Why would I be proactive? Why am I paying taxes on it? So we have to think through this as logically as possible. And the first thing we always have to talk about when you have a mountain of IRA is taxation. Taxation is what really drives the decisions on how to handle your mountain of IRA. So the first thing we have to understand when we look at this chart, you got the single over 65 here, joint over 65 over here. The only difference of being over 65 is a slightly bigger standard deduction. So what you'll notice is, yes, the standard deduction is included here. If you itemize, great, that's just more in these buckets that you'll be able to utilize. But vast majority of people, especially in retirement, are not itemizing anymore. We have such big standard deductions that it's really hard to get enough to itemize. So the next part, understand that you're only taxed one bucket at a time. So you've got the first 15,000 or 30,000 single joint at zero. If you have $1 over, you don't pay 10% on all of it. You only pay 10% on that 11,000 from 15 to 26, or that, what is this, 22,000-ish right here from 30 to 52. Okay, then we go to 12%. Okay, 0, 10, 12. There's a big line here for a reason, because the next tax bracket is 22, the biggest jump in our taxation. Okay, most people have to make that jump from 0 to 10, kind of obvious as to why. The reality is that anything 12% or less is considered very tax efficient. This is the low income family tax brackets and retirees tax brackets. Our faithful government thinks that 120,000 for a married couple is plenty to live on and 60,000 for a single person. All right, that's really what those are. We've always had them in our tax system. We've had the lower tax brackets for that situation. And then we jump to 22, 24, 32, 35, 37. In 2026, this is going to be 15. This is going to be 25, then 28, so on. Okay, so we do already have a jump in this taxation, which then drives this decision even further when it comes to taxation of trying to be proactive. Okay, so let's think about this logically. We've got this bar right here, this strong line in the middle. Now, withdraw and pay taxes when you're in these lower taxes. Okay, we're okay paying 10 and 12%. You should be okay paying 10 and 12%. The amount of debt we have out there, it's hard to imagine taxation ever being lower than that. Historically, this is as low as it gets. Not only in the United States, but worldwide, this is as low as it gets. So take advantage of this. Okay, when you are in this taxation world, 60,000 or 120,000 or less total income, then we need to be choosing to pay that taxation. But when you're in the 22, 24, 32, 35 in general, that's when we're going to choose to defer taxation. Now, I know plenty of retirees that are living in these 22, 24% tax brackets on up. And so 22 sounds great to them. But the reality is the vast majority of retirees control their retirement in that 12% or less. Okay, so everybody's in a different situation. I'm talking generalities. Defer taxation as much as you can when you're in the higher tax brackets and pay the taxation. Choose to be proactive when you're in the lower tax brackets. Okay, so the other 10,000-foot thing that we have to understand about taxation is, because each bucket is taxed one at a time, spreading out that IRA for as long as possible is our priority. Right? For the previous video I made on this topic, for those that cared about their heirs, not only did they have their own life to spread it out, but their heirs' life to spread it out. So that changes how we think about it. Now we have your life, because we don't care what we leave to our heirs. Now it's all about what's best for you in terms of paying the least amount of taxation. And waking up and arbitrarily taking 100 grand out of an IRA is going to rocket you into higher taxation. And that's the least efficient way to do this. Okay, so we want to be proactive in this case to avoid that higher taxation. And we don't want to do silly things like just the heck with it, convert it all this year. No, that's not how this works. It's never an arbitrary number. It's never just, I don't want to have to worry about it later. No, that's ridiculous. Why would you give away 30% of your IRA when you can give away 12%, right? So we need to be proactive and have a plan and look at your situation logically. So I always try to make sure we go back to that big picture. We have to look at you logically. How big is your IRA? Is it all your savings? Do you have nothing else to rely on? Do you not have a pot of Roth money or after-tax money that you can pull from? The last thing I want you to do is wake up in retirement and say, hey, I want to go buy a second home. I need 100 grand or 500 grand or 200 grand or whatever. I need a big chunk of money to buy a condo, to buy a this, to buy a that, to buy a boat, whatever it is. You need a big chunk of money, and the only place you can pull from is your IRA. Boom, that rockets you way into higher taxation, and it's extremely inefficient and wasteful. We've been good stewards of our money to this point. That's why we have all this savings. Why would we put ourselves in that position? So your opportunity to stay away from problems like that is between retirement and required minimum distributions. If you retire at 60, you've got many years for you to work through some of that IRA at lower taxation. It's really important that you become proactive in those earlier years. And then if we don't care what happens after we're gone, at that point, you hit required distributions, just pull what you have to, and that's it. Pay the least amount of taxation as possible and don't be proactive anymore. You've made it to that required distribution stage. And hopefully you're not forced to take out more than you needed to spend on your enjoyable retirement anyways. That's always that key. You're looking for that balance, that once you hit full Social Security and those required distributions, that you're not forced to pull a whole bunch of extra money out that you didn't even need to spend on yourself. Because then you're forced to pay that higher taxation for no reason whatsoever. So that's the proactive side of this. But we always have to look at IRAs as how do we spread this out as best that we can to pay the least amount of taxation. And that's why everybody here is always in a different situation because we have a different mix of money. You might have a mountain of IRA, but you might have high income needs, and the higher required distribution you're going to spend on yourself and enjoy anyways. So maybe we don't be proactive because we're going to want that money coming in anyways. And maybe we have Roth money, and maybe we have after-tax money for those situations where we need that extra money for the big purchase. So we have that flexibility. So then all of a sudden we decide not to be proactive. Why choose to pay taxes on stuff we didn't need to pull out anyways? So we're always looking at this from 10,000 feet, and everyone's in a different situation. So choosing to be proactive is different. So here's what we do. Now, in a situation where we don't care how much our heirs get, we're always going to lean towards not being proactive, believe it or not. We're going to lean the other direction. We're going to lean towards not being proactive. But there are some reasons to be proactive. If your IRA is the majority of all of your savings, then be proactive. Meaning, if all you have is that mountain of IRA money and you don't have any Roth and you have very little after-tax savings, then the only place you're going to be able to pull from is that IRA, which means if you have a big purchase need or any event that happens, you are then forcing yourself to be exposed to higher taxation. And we don't like that. You got to diversify. So from retirement to your required distributions, be as proactive as possible to get money out, convert it to Roth if you don't need to spend it yourself, start diversifying that pool of money you have saved for retirement. Then, if eventually your required minimum distribution is pushing you into higher taxation and you didn't need that money to enjoy your own retirement, that's the one thing that I always hate to see. That means we weren't proactive enough. right? So when you head into retirement, if you have a big mountain of IRA money, even if you have other options like Roth and after-tax money, if that required minimum distribution once you reach that age is going to push you into much higher taxation and a whole bunch of extra income that you didn't even need to enjoy your retirement. You're just going to take that required distribution and stick it in the bank and not use it. If that's the case, then you got to be proactive. We don't want to be forced into all this extra taxation and extra money that we need to pull out, and we don't need to spend it. I'm okay pulling out money and paying taxes on it if we're going to spend it to enjoy our retirement. But the reality is I don't want to be forced into that higher amount and pay taxes on it when I didn't need it. Okay, so those are the two scenarios when you don't care how much you leave to your heirs, that you still want to be proactive in those early years. Remember, you walk off the job, you're retired, now have a plan between now and required distributions. Okay, that's when you got to be proactive. That's when you should be choosing to pull money out of that IRA money, convert it to Roth if you don't want to spend it yourself. Now, if withdrawing from IRA causes higher taxation, only withdraw what you have to. That's why I say once you hit required distribution, yeah, you're forced to take that required minimum distribution. At that point, you don't really care what goes to your heirs. Why pull out more? No reason to, unless you need it for yourself. Only pull out what you have to. Okay, once you hit that point, if you have income already that fills the 12% tax bracket, and you're forced to take that required distribution, or you really needed some money and you had to pull it out, you leave that IRA alone unless you need the money or are forced to pull it out in a required minimum distribution. If withdrawing from IRA increases the taxation of your Social Security, only withdraw what you have to. Right? There are plenty of people out there that live on a very small, tiny budget, and not all of their Social Security is taxed. 15% of our Social Security will never be taxed, but up to 85% of our Social Security can be taxed. And some people pay taxes on 0 of their Social Security. Some pay taxes on 50% of it, some 70%, some 85%. And it's all dictated by the other sources of income. So if you choose to withdraw from an IRA and it causes your Social Security to be taxed, you're essentially causing double taxation. Why would we do that voluntarily? Certainly, there's no reason to do Roth conversions at that point unless one of the first two scenarios applies. So be very careful about pulling from that IRA if it's causing the taxation of your Social Security. All right, hopefully that helps. Maybe watching the other video would help too. If you do care about your heirs, you'll see the different perspective. If you do care about your heirs, you tend to lean towards being more proactive and getting more money into Roth. If you don't care about your heirs, you're thinking selfishly about I want to diversify if I only have IRA money, right? Or I'm just going to pay what I have to and deal with it when it comes. All right. So hopefully that helps in the perspective of dealing with these big mountains of pre-tax money that you have out there. Write some comments below. If you like the video, share it with friends, subscribe to the channel. We're always putting new videos on here. We're trying to reach that 1,000 mark. Big difference on the exposure once you hit that 1,000 mark of subscribers. So help us out, hit the subscribe button, and watch the other videos that apply to this as well. Hope to see you next week. Look out for our full form classes. We're opening them up to the YouTube world as well in 2024. Keep an eye out for that. And the new website that we're launching to schedule hourly appointments with me as well. Going to be a great resource for a lot of people. So hope to see you. Thanks so much.